All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Xbox 2 plus 1, or in this case, the Xbox One plus 1, which I guess still is the Xbox
Xbox
2.
too.
Yeah. And with me is Spawnwave, probably one of the biggest gaming channels on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today, Spawn.
It's good to be here, Rand. It was a good day.
Yeah, I really appreciate when you invite me on the Spawncast. So I was always wanted to get you on to talk about Xbox for one of these things, and that when me and Jez decided to do this guest show, it was like we gotta get certain people on, and your name always came up to the top when polling our Patreon listeners who they want to see. But sometimes people can say you're an Xbox hater. Is this true? Are you a hater of Xbox?
I like to think I'm a hater of basically all of them, every
Yeah,
system.
you hate them all equally.
Hate them all equally. You also like them all equally. So who knows?
Yes. And for those of you wondering in chat, or if you're listening to this later, Jez will not be here this week because he is not feeling well and he has to fly back from the UK to Germany. So it's just going to be me and Spawn talking about Xbox. So if you got any topics you want us to discuss in the chat, make sure you drop them in there. But we have some things we want to talk about now. For anybody wondering, anybody doesn't know, Spawn, why don't you plug yourself and all the amazing things you do? Because you got like 2 channels, you got an amazing podcast that you do every single Saturday with a whole collection of internet personalities.
I try to get everyone. I try to get representation from everywhere. I don't need to find the Stadia person anymore, so we're good on that.
Oh, thank God.
Uh, I do the podcast, do the daily news in the morning. I have a second channel that I have some just little bits that get through, and I want to cover it without being able to try to fit it into an entire show. Some of it's maybe more strays into opinion territory stuff for it. I just do like the tech teardowns and some of that as well, just for fun, like doing like repairs on older consoles or different things, modifications. I just kind of have fun with a little bit of everything for gaming.
And taking those consoles that Microsoft sends you early and ripping them apart, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard from them since then. Hopefully everything's all right over there.
They must have like, we sent this guy an Xbox Series X early, and he just took it apart. We're not sending him anything else.
It was a well-built system, and I assume they were happy with their return on investment because it's like 2 million views overall.
Oh, that is a lot of views. That is definitely.
I feel like that was probably worth it to them for a console.
Yeah, potentially. Now, I haven't had, even though I've been on your show a couple times and we've talked before and after, I've never asked you what made you want to get into YouTube.
That's a good question. What made me want to get into YouTube?
Was it just a hot, like for me it was just a hobby. Like it was like, hey, someone's like, we make a YouTube, and I did it. I never expected it would, become what it has or reach 100,000 subs. Was it the same for you, or was it different?
Oh no, I mean, I started it just kind of playing around as a hobby thing because I was working at a couple different gaming stores at the time. So I was already around games a lot, and I was like, well, I'm gonna do a channel. We'll just talk about things, and it was more about the electronic stuff. It's some Dragon Ball videos, so I like Dragon Ball Z as well. And then started kind of discussing some of this stuff with like the Switch. That was at the time it was still pretty new. I think they were first talking about like the NX and all these things. So I was observing that, and they were talking about the Switch, and then we had all the stuff with eventually the build up to the One X, and I just realized I can cover a lot of this stuff in video format, cut it down to what I used to watch back in the day with things like G4 before they tried to revive it like twice and kind of go that route, and it seems to have worked out over the last like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it only seems to have worked out. Only how many subs you have now on your main channel? Like 600,000, 700,000 something?
Yeah, it's something.
It seems to have worked out. Is a nice
up on
way.
700,000. We're pushing to 700,000.
Yeah, you'll get to the million in no time. Especially, I mean, yeah, it's always when the new consoles are about to come out, you skyrocket. So we probably got some time the next consoles, but probably before then you'll be at a million.
Might see that. Maybe something new from Nintendo in the next year.
I forgot. I see. Here's the thing. I usually think of gaming in the sense of Xbox and PlayStation. I totally always forget that Nintendo exists.
Oh, I even look at stuff on Apple Arcade if it's big enough.
Oh yeah, so next year it's if the with the Switch 2 coming out, that's definitely going to be a big year for your channel again.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yep, it was a lot of fun with the on the build up to the PS5 and the Xbox Series.
it
That was a
was
good time, and
it was, and then
we'll have
nobody
fun with
can
the
find
Switch
them
too.
for 2 years essentially,
Yeah, yeah.
and you
Get a
still
little easier
really
now.
can't get a Series X now.
I mean, my Walmart occasionally will have a Series S, and I've seen PS5 in there, but I think I've seen the Series X once in there. I think, yeah, but like one time. So they
Um,
need to figure that out.
they do need to figure it out. They do need to figure it out. Let's talk about one of your favorite franchises on Xbox, and that's
Mhm.
Halo.
Yep, it is Halo. Played it
Um,
this morning.
Played it this morning. Are you excited for season 3 coming next week?
I'm optimistic. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had an update to where I even kind of fell out of it a bit and went to Call of Duty and did Warzone for a while there, playing with some of the guys from the Spawncast and stuff. We'll just kind of run Warzone here and there, but we did Halo a lot. Like I actually got them to play Halo consistently and somewhat competitively. You can do the ranked stuff, but I know a lot of people just like to do quick play. But I like to go on and do ranked matches a lot. And my problem was once I got to Onyx, there wasn't really a lot to do after that.
Mm.
So I just ended up doing quick play with them. And we had fun with the different game modes and they tried to add stuff in, but it was very, very infrequent to where you felt like you got everything done. I was level 100 and all the battle passes and stuff for what's felt like an entire year at this point. And I'm hopeful that season 3 can kind of reinvigorate it a little bit because they need to get on the ball with this game. It's a shame to kind of see Halo flounder like it has, but I'm thinking season 3 gets it started to where we go up to this Tatanka thing that's been rumored for a while,
Yes,
and
the battle
it just
royale, right?
yeah, and it's just because I know here was my thing before Halo Infinite came out. There were rumors then about a some sort of battle royale mode for Halo, and I know a lot of Halo diehards were like, no, don't do a battle royale, don't do it. But in my mind, I was thinking you should have a battle royale just to cover that base. Like you could still have the standard arena shooter, but you can also have a battle royale. Like Call of Duty just separates it. You just go into the Call of Duty application, and then there's 3 different fields you go to. So if you don't want to do battle royale, you just go do the multiplayer arena shooter stuff. I it was weird to me that people were so against it, but it's I
I think it's
playing Halo
because
for as long as I have, I kind of understand as well the diehard viewpoint, but you got to evolve.
well, I think it's because people didn't want Halo to essentially copy what others did, right? They wanted Halo to stay true to its core and not chase after trends, which Battle Royale at the time, the biggest thing, I don't even know if it's a trend anymore. It's just like the biggest thing for first person shooters. And I do think it was a miss not to have a Battle Royale launch because clearly there was a lack of content, which is one of the reasons why Halo kind of plummeted. And if you had a Battle Royale, maybe Halo hangs on more than it did, right? Instead,
I would have looked for them to do some sort of spin on the battle royale format. I know I kind of view battle royale now as a mode like Team Slayer at this point. Like Team Slayer will be in all these different competitive shooters or arena shooters or just anything with a multiplayer and a first person shooter or anything. So battle royale can be there next to Team Slayer or objective based capture the flag, oddball, any King of the Hill. I I don't think it's necessarily something that's viewed outside of those game modes for me anymore. So you just got to kind of include it really going forward, but have a spin on it. Halo, I feel like could do a situation where they go back to when Spartans were first being trained and they kind of treat it like it's like a military exercise and all the Spartans are dropping onto an island they've set up.
so how we've seen a lot of talk about the future of Halo, right? I know you've made
Mhm.
videos about it. They have removed a lot of people from the leadership position at 343. Bonnie Ross is gone. Tons of people are gone. Like Microsoft just had layoffs there. Are you excited for the future of Halo? Like, do you like? I know it's a loaded question because it's one of those things where it's like, all right, all these you're basically moving the chairs on the the ship, right, trying to
Mm.
figure out what to do, and there's reports that Certain Affinity is going to be doing something or somebody else. It really seems like nobody really knows what's going on at 343 or with Halo in general. There's a part of me that's like excited because I do feel the upper leadership at 343 let the franchise down and the fans down, and
Right.
that letting other people run it could be beneficial. Do you agree with that viewpoint, or do you look at it like, man, Halo's had its time in the sun and there's probably no coming back from this?
I feel like Halo. I know. I think Halo can come back if they do it right. Because even games like, I mean, we watched what happened with No Man's Sky. That was ugly. That
Yeah,
was
it
really
was.
bad. And it made a recovery. Even Fortnite, when Fortnite first launched, to be honest, no one really cared. Like, it came out, it was like this save the world mode and stuff. And it wasn't until they figured out Battle Royale and really launched that mode into the stratosphere that Fortnite really blew up. I think Halo Infinite can recover, but it they gotta all of a sudden start nailing everything. Like, everything that comes out has to be good. They have to figure out the 3 month. Well, how many? We want four. We want like 4 updates a year, I think, is what Call of Duty's now set the trend at. So you got to figure out how to have some sort of update every 3 months, basically, that's substantial. And now they have Forge figured out with community stuff. They just need to lean into that. And yeah, contract companies like Certain Affinity. I mean, they might even. I don't know if they would go out and buy Certain Affinity and just fold them in,
I think they
but
have to.
you gotta
I think
start
that
getting.
yeah,
Yeah,
they have
yeah, you gotta
to.
start getting this stuff figured out when it comes to the workflow, because that seems to be the 343's biggest problem. Was they just figuring out how to go from point A to point B with new content has been tough for them.
Yeah, because the game launched and people really liked it. I mean, say what you
Yes.
will about the campaign and the story. Some people really liked it, some people didn't, but it was basically universal praise for the multiplayer. People loved it. There was complaints about maybe the monetization aspect of it, but a lot of people were like, "Halo's back, the King's back," and it wasn't
Yeah.
really until what 3 months, 4 months later when like the next season didn't show up, or if it did show up, it was really light on content, and it was just consistently light on content in an era where there's so many other free to play games to play that have content. It was like you're not going to be able to hold people. So,
Right.
I,
As soon as they said it was free to play, they immediately put themselves in competition.
so do you
with
think
Apex.
that was because I've had this discussion with people
Mm.
that making Halo Infinite free to play was probably the decision that really hurt it the most.
Well, if it wasn't free to play, I do question how many people would be, what the player population would be right now. Because
Yeah, there's that.
free to play, there might be people who are just now signing into Halo Infinite for the first time that are counted in the numbers on something like Steam database. And if that, it's a little concerning that if you think about, okay, this would have been a Game Pass or a $60 game at the time. I know they've moved to 70 now, but 60 then. And does that mean we would be at half the numbers? Would there be 1,000 people playing Halo Infinite right now? I will tell you this. The other day, I signed in, right? Because I see the seasons coming back. All right, let me get back into the swing of things here. I'm gonna load this up, and I'm doing quick play, and I'm rolling through them. All right, great, still got it. Let me go to ranked, and they had 2 modes now, and one was kind of the mode of everyone has like their own life and like different lives, and you have a number of them, and eventually wipe the team out. Couldn't find a match. It was like, oh, you got 10 minutes before you find one.
Really, that is a
That's
steep waiting time.
Weird. Yeah. So then I went to quick play and I found one immediately, and I'm like, okay, well, that usually happens if there's because they're not going to fill ranked modes with bots. They don't. If someone quits out, you're just down a person. So in my mind, I'm like, oh man, wow, okay, maybe they need to get some more hype around this game to get people in ranked, because I understand not as many people want to do ranked because it's the quote unquote sweatier mode. But it was a little surprising to me that mode just couldn't find anyone.
The reason I sort of didn't really play much of Halo Infinite is because my friend group who plays Halo is just so significantly better than me that it's just not fun. It's just not fun for me to play.
Oh,
Like I am
what, you,
just
like
getting
the caring? You don't like that?
well even like because they like to play certain type of modes, like it's arena. They don't really like to fool around in big team battle. So you get into arena, and even in if you just like regular casual or whatever, their ranks are so high that they're pulling in people that are really good, and I'm just not that good anymore. So I'm just dying all the time, and when you die all the time constantly, I'm just like, yeah, you know what, I'm good. I probably need to play with other people, but that's one of the reasons why I fell off. And honestly, I've been really on a battle royale kick, and it's just kind of what I want to play.
Okay.
And it's like whenever they do come out with the battle royale, I'll be back. I'll be playing it. It's just a matter of when, 2024, because I don't think it'll be this year.
Yeah,
You know?
it's kind of lining up like it would. I mean, who knows though? They launched Halo Infinite very quickly. Like, well, I mean, they delayed it, but like when it was ready to go, they're like, it's in quote unquote beta for the multiplayer, basically saying, hey, in a month we'll be able to get the retail copies in stores.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
So,
I hope hopefully it comes back to its former glory. We do have a question here from Austin
Mhm.
Sellers who says, "What is the system, the game that got you into gaming, and what is your favorite console of all time?" His is the GameCube. What's yours?
GameCube is a good one. GameCube's a good one. I mean, the system I feel like for most people, it's gonna be their first
Yeah, it's
system.
gonna be the
I mean,
first one.
it had to be the original Nintendo then, with something like Mario 3 was like pinnacle at the time. But even like the Mega Man series started there too. I love the Mega Man series.
I mean, everybody knows my distaste for Nintendo, which is exaggerated, but it would have to be the NES. Got me into gaming,
I feel like a
100%.
lot of people our age are gonna say
Yeah,
are gonna say that, you know.
I mean, the
'Cause
first time I saw
NES.
Super Mario, or the first time I saw Punch Out, my jaw was on the floor.
Oh, Punch Out's a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers 3, like Duck Hunt, all these games, like I still remember them. You know, I know I had a ColecoVision and an Atari. I just don't have any actual memories of them. But I have memories of, Punch Out, like watching my dad play, right?
Mm.
And stuff
Yep.
like that. And so that's the system that got me into it. My favorite system of all time, that's the 360. I think the 360 is, for me personally, it's the system I played the most games on. It's where I met a lot of my friends. But it was also just an amazing generation from, the Gears and the Halos, the Grand Theft Autos, the BioShocks. I don't know. I sort of feel like we're still in the Xbox Series X and Xbox One gens are more extensions of what we played during the 360 generation, except back then we got sequels every 2 years instead of basically once a generation.
Yeah.
But they were making like indies were just starting to come into their own, right? You still had B tier games back then, right? It's not like now where like there are hardly any B tier games because making games is so expensive. But I just really have a lot of fond memories of the 360. What's your favorite?
I mean, it for me, my favorite system would probably come out of that generation with the PS2, the GameCube, and the Xbox.
Okay.
Just because that was, I think, my favorite generation ever was right in there, and I do like the GameCube quite a bit. Just that's more like nostalgic memories, to be honest, in that like that early 2000s time period. But that there was just you were talking about creativity. There was a ton of creativity then, and that's when the indie games were, almost basically like full games that would show up on store shelves, and there was just a lot of variety at all times. And also maybe part of that is the internet didn't get to where it did even during the Xbox 360 PS3 generation, where it was there's a lot of opinions and arguing flying around. At that time it was your friends, and it was the back of the box at the store. And that was it. And yeah, sometimes that would turn on you and you would go home with a dud, but man, sometimes you'd discover like a Rogue Galaxy on the PS2. And it was just amazing times back then.
PS2 is a great system, and I did own all three systems that gen. I started out with the PS2. I was a PlayStation guy, and it was an amazing console. But I did get a GameCube second because I was working, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get my own, And I think they were selling it for $99. You remember? Yep. $99 with Metroid Prime, and I was like, yep. And I love the Metroid Prime series. I'm actually thinking about hooking up my Switch to play Metroid Prime Remaster.
Is shockingly good in how it looks. Although Retro's been pretty good working with I'll say lesser hardware necessarily than what's around it in the market. But what they did here with Prime Remastered, it's for what we expect Nintendo to sell things for. I think it shocked everyone when it came out at $40 because it's probably up there as like the top 3 best looking games on the Switch right now.
And it means they're probably going to sell the other 2 Metroid Prime games for 40 each, right? So
kind of, I've been trying to figure that out because they're not going to put as much work apparently into the other 2. It's going to be more what you'd expect a remaster to look like, whereas this one apparently, like you look at it, you're like, that's real close to a remake.
Well, yeah, that's what Don Otaku, Nintendo Don the Otaku says, that it's a remake, honestly, and I've seen a lot of discussion about that. Like, even though Nintendo officially calls it a remaster, a lot of people say, no, this is a remake. So do you fall into the, like, this is an actual remake or a remaster?
So it's technically a remaster. It's still built on the same engine. So, and they really didn't do much to mess with even animations or any of that. It's just they did a lot of texture art. They basically took everything and moved it up to what you'd expect out of a current gen game, like if Metroid Prime came out today on the Switch, and it really shows. Like, it is a game you could just pop on your Switch now, even on like your big 4K set, and you'll be like, wow, that was really good, and it's 60 frames.
The all important 60 frames.
Yeah, it's very smooth. It still has that atmosphere. It has touches in the game that, I mean, honestly, you won't even see in PS5 and an Xbox Series game. It's like that. Like when you fire a missile and it's too bright and you're near it, you see the reflection of Samus in your visor. Things like that. It's like, oh, whoa, that was weird.
So what got you into Xbox? If we're talking about, the GameCube, PS2 gen, Xbox gen, what got you into Xbox? Was it Halo 1 or was it not?
Yeah,
KOTOR?
It was Halo. It was Halo. I was there when the Xbox first released, and too young to buy one then. But my neighbor, his dad got it for them for Christmas, and they had that, and they had like NFL Fever. I think Peyton Manning was on the cover of that one, maybe. But they got Halo, the original one. I remember I went over there. I was like, "This is incredible. This is like one of the best things I've ever seen." And eventually, I got an Xbox. But for the longest time, I didn't even have an Xbox. I would just go to a friend's house. They had Xboxes, and I bought an Xbox controller, and I had a copy of Halo. So I had both without the Xbox, and I would just take it over just in case, because one of our friends didn't have a copy of Halo, but they had an Xbox. So we'd have to bring Halo over. And I was always the person who had a copy of Halo that would roll around with it. But eventually I got an Xbox. I actually got the GameCube first, then the Xbox, then the PS2.
Really?
So I was late on owning a PS2. But at the time, for me, it was like you got a game or a system, Christmas or your birthday. And that's how it was.
Yeah, that's how
like
it was.
I wasn't getting like stuff anytime during like the rest of the year, really. Report cards, whatever, didn't matter. You're not getting it. It's too much. And my birthday is 3 days after Christmas.
Oh, that sucks. Well, I mean,
there you go.
I guess so you still get Christmas presents and then 3 days later get more presents, or it was like Christmas is also your birthday?
It was like Christmas was the big present. And then like, let's say I got a system, because I'd always ask for a system. Every single year I'd ask for a system. And one year I remember I got the Dreamcast the year before it got discontinued. But I would always ask for a system for Christmas. And then I knew my birthday, I would get a follow-up as a game. So like, for example, I got the Nintendo 64, I got the Pokemon Snap bundle. And then I think, I got Mario 64 came in, then I got Pokemon Snap for my birthday when the Nintendo 64 came out. But the GameCube, same thing. The Xbox, I actually bought with birthday and Christmas money, and then I just got a whole bunch of games for my birthday and stuff with it.
See, I didn't get Xbox, the OG Xbox, until 2004, like 2 weeks before Halo 2 came out.
I mean, people were going Halo. That was a different time period, man. When Halo 2 came out, that is, I feel like Halo 3 was close. I don't know. Something about that Halo 2 drop was ridiculous when that happened. Maybe it's because of my age then. It was like 2004. Yeah, it was like late high school, kind of like mid high school. This thing drops and people were out at like 2 a.m. waiting in line at the mall to get this thing.
Yeah,
and it was like a real midnight release back then.
Yeah, so it's like I was kind of like the Sony fan, because I was PlayStation 1 was my system, PlayStation 2 was my system, and it was like, all right, I was working, I had a union electrician job, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna get the Xbox. And so I bought it, and it was like everybody's talking about it. Was Halo 2 hype was everywhere, and I'm like, what is this? So I bought it. I'm like, let me play through Halo 1, and I tell you what, I didn't really care for Halo 1.
Interesting. Okay, you didn't like Halo 1.
3 years, because it was like 3 years later.
Okay.
I felt like a lot of games had sort of copied it that I played in between. I also like felt Half-Life was better, Half-Life 2 and stuff.
Okay.
So I wasn't the biggest fan of Halo 1, but then Halo 2 changed my life.
Halo 2
It was
good.
one of those things where it was like Halo 2 came out and it was Xbox Live, and I had no intention of playing online at all, right?
Oh, interesting.
And my younger brother was like, went out and he bought the Xbox Live starter kit, you know, the one that came with the headset and it came with a year, 12 months of gold or whatever.
Yep.
And he's setting it up and he's like, what should I be our gamer tag? And I'm like, Randall Thor. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, cool. So he puts in Randall Thor and it's already taken. And then the 19th was his birthday. So that's literally why I'm Randall Thor 19. Like it's a main character from a fantasy series that I love, and the 19th is my brother's birthday. I would have I didn't know in 2004 that like I'd make a YouTube channel in 2017 or whatever and be known as Randall Thor 19 to a lot of people then, and then I just got transfixed by the multiplayer. My brother would be playing it, I'd be sitting on the couch watching him play it, getting excited. Yep. Then I would play and get like really into it, and then I started playing it and took over, and then I played it so much I was daydreaming about it at work. I started calling in to work, being like, I can't come in, and I'd be sit there and play Halo 2 literally all day online with buddies that you would meet, and then eventually I got fired because I was just
oh wow
I'm like, well, good, I can play more Halo 2. Yeah, Halo 2 was something else.
Yeah, I think Halo 1, the biggest thing, it had some standout like single player missions in the campaign, like Silent Cartographer is one that people point to, but it was definitely the multiplayer side of things where you would get together with a bunch of people and you'd have multiple Xboxes. You have tube TVs that weighed 80 pounds that you lug to each other's houses somehow, and it would all come together with LAN cables running all over the place. Those were I think the biggest moments for Halo that people look back on, and probably why a lot of us are so attached to it, because there is that sense of like better days with friends when you get together and actually play.
But not
games.
even that, but like 2007 Halo 3 launch, like you mentioned, I remember lining up at midnight.
Yeah,
you know,
I worked at GameStop when that game came out. It was crazy.
I actually went to Game Crazy to get mine back then, but I just remember the line just at midnight, just down the block. Like, I'd never seen anything like it, and it will probably never be anything like it again, because everything's, you know, there is no more midnight launches, essentially, anymore. But what an era. You know, speaking of, like, to switch to digital, I know you're a big physical collector. You like your physical games. Yep. I'm all digital, right? And I've always had this conversation with OJ about, like, yeah, let's just get rid of physical. It's a dying media, and you know how OJ doesn't like digital stuff.
No,
There's been a lot of pushback recently about always online games, specifically the recently revealed Suicide Squad at the State of Play that people didn't like, but was like, okay, you can only play this online, but also Redfall. The Redfall controversy, hey, always online, even when playing in single player. Then there was the whole stuff with the disc. Are you finding more people are pushing back against the always online thing now, or is it always, has the people been kind of up in arms against it the same amount? Because I feel people were like this against Destiny for a little bit and some other games, but because of like Redfall and Suicide Squad, the conversation has come up about, well, you know, in 30 years, if the servers go down, I won't be able to play it anymore. Like, what do you think about all that?
I think for a while with Destiny, as an example, you mentioned that when it was first talked as, oh, you got to be online for all of this, there was pushback to it. But I kind of think now when you hear always online for single player, I mean, most people try to figure out, well, why is that always online, right? And then you start to put two and two together, and you're like, oh, it's because there's something they have to track. Does it have to do with some sort of currency that then plays into a battle pass that then adds into this idea of live service, and people are very worn down with live service, I feel like, and all of that. And partially is because the game industry itself just kept throwing it at us constantly
Yes.
in everything. And that I just kind of think you see Suicide Squad, and then you're like, is that's Rocksteady? Really? That's Rocksteady?
Mm.
That's what they are now. And you realize, well, I mean, hey, 6 years ago that was it. 6 years ago Destiny was starting to roll, and I'm sure WB thought, wow, let's get with Rocksteady, let's make their next big Destiny type game. And it makes less sense now that we've seen so many of, I mean, that one week, I mean, live service games shut down like in the snap of a finger.
Rumbleverse, Knockout City. Those are the two that I remember offhand. I know there was more, but it was just, it seemed like the bubble on live service games as a service had popped to a certain degree, right? Because you have these smaller ones suddenly being shut down. Crossfire X was another one that got shut down.
Yep. And that one, they just basically like took it off the store completely. It's a single player. It's like, nope, it's gone.
Yeah, just completely gone. You didn't play the Remedy campaign. It was like, yeah, because it was horrible, but that's neither here nor there. Do you worry about game preservation at all for this sort of thing? Because I'll give you my take on it. Like, I'm all digital, right? And I need to have this conversation with MVG because I feel like there's two sides to why someone buys a game, right? There's like the ownership part of it. I bought this, I own it, I should be able to play it whenever I want, and I 100% agree with that, right? I bought something in 2020, I should be able to access that content in 2040, which is why a lot of people are upset that Destiny 2 vaults content that you paid for, right?
Yeah.
But me, I maybe have a different viewpoint of it. Sure, when I buy something, I am owning it, but the thought doesn't enter in my mind about the idea of playing it 20 years from now. It's more like I'm buying it for the experience I'm going to have right now or whenever I do play it. And once that's over, then that's it for me. So if somebody, if when I play Redfall, when I buy Redfall and I beat it, I'm probably never ever going to play it again. So if that was taken away from me 20 years down the road, I'd be perfectly okay with that because that's the ownership. That wasn't why I was buying it in the first place. I was buying it to be able to play it and get the experience. I wasn't buying it to own it, if that makes sense.
Okay. You're buying it for the experience.
I'm
like
buying
if you could go to see a movie, you buy a ticket.
I know like owning it is part of it, but like the main reason I'm buying it isn't to own it so I can play it in the future. I don't know how you view that stuff. So
I think there's also the idea of if you, let's say you buy something physically and it can just be played off a disc and all this, there's also a sense of if I need to, I can sell it in the future.
True. Yeah.
So there is some sort of rebate aspect to it there. But the only time so gaming preservation is something that I think about occasionally when, for example, there's a game that's actually going to be 20 years old soon, I think, that I still play. Every I'd say like I'll say every year or so I'll dig out SmackDown Here Comes the Pain.
Ooh, okay.
Very good PS2 game. To me, it was the best wrestling game that's ever been made. I know people always say No Mercy and all this. No, I think Here Comes the Pain is the best one. And I'll play it, but I use a backwards compatible PS3 to play it. Now, the reason we're never going to see a remaster or remake of that is because obviously the names, the license, it's too far gone, right? Probably the same reason we don't have Jet Set Future or whatever on the Xbox now. So there is that sense of, okay, for an old head, maybe you're going to look at that and go, well, I'd rather just have it on a disc. And that way, if I experience this again in 20 years where I want to go back and play it, I can. But I also understand that the world is changing as more and more gamers cycle in, and they kind of get used to just being digital, and that's just kind of the world they enter into. And then more and more people come in, and that's just kind of what we see going forward. And to me, the all digital future is inevitable because it benefits the publishers, it benefits the developers. There's more control, there's more money. So for me, I'd prefer to always have a physical disc I can buy, pop in the system, and just install it. and play it. But I also understand these single player games that it need to be connected to a server, they're gonna be, I think, become more frequent as we go. I don't
You
think they're
think so?
slowing down. Well, when there's an all digital future, why wouldn't you
True.
require people to be online? Especially if it's a multiplayer game. It's like, well, you got to be online to play the multiplayer anyway. I mean, if you don't connect to the internet with like your Xbox, for example, I've noticed this. You do lose a lot of things.
Like on the dashboard, like a lot of
Yeah,
things
your
just disappear.
dashboard is
Yeah.
like barren.
Yeah,
So,
it is. You know, the thing about Redfall is they haven't explained why they need to be always online.
I've no. Is it something with co-op or like cross progression or something like
Yeah,
that?
but they haven't come out and said it. I've seen speculation that they might be using like Denuvo's DRM on the PC side, so it's kind of like one of those things where it's like it always needs that sort of protection to always be online for it. I don't, but it's like I think they do, like if you're gonna say, hey, we're using the cloud for whatever reason, and that's why it always got to be online, fine. But they haven't said why. And same thing with Suicide Squad. It's like it just is. Suicide Squad looks also even worse because it's got the battle pass. It's got the horrible user interface. I just wonder if people are going to get sick of that sort of stuff thrown at them in co-op and single player games. It makes sense in Fortnites and your Call of Duties, but
Yeah.
does it really make sense in these type of games? I'm not really so sure. Besides, Suicide Squad looks like Crackdown 4. I couldn't believe it when I'm like, I felt like I was like, this is Crackdown 4, which is
I saw that
superhero.
comparison. A lot of people pointed it out as like a Crackdown.
Did we really wait
clone.
8 years for Rocksteady to make Crackdown? Is that what happened here?
I don't know what happened there. It's a shame too. And what's weird is they didn't show any of the. I almost wonder if there is more to the game in terms of the boss battles, for example. Like, we didn't see them fight Flash or Batman or Superman or Green Lantern. Did they really choose like the worst gameplay to show us? That's the only thing I can think of. It's like, okay, they just showed us terrible gameplay. But if we go in and we're fighting Superman and he just has glowing purple orbs on his shoulders or something, ugh.
I mean,
I don't know.
Rocksteady, one of my favorite developers. I love their Arkham series, and it was like, all right, 8 years. It's been a long time, and it's like, this is what you make. It's 5 years later, and it's like, oh my god, the Justice League's in it. Wonder Woman, Flash, Superman. It's in Metropolis, Lex Luthor, Brainiac. But you play as the Suicide Squad.
And they got the green light to go mature rating with it.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's basically just guns. It's like, oh man, this isn't exactly.
Yeah, what was that? Why did everyone just has an Uzi running around? I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I don't understand.
Why does Captain Boomerang have a handgun?
And why does Captain Boomerang have super speed?
Yeah.
What is going on in this game? I don't know.
It looks like a Destiny Light superhero game. I don't know. It's very weird.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying, hey, it's gonna meet the same fate as Marvel's Avengers from Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix. And it's like, really? It's like
I can't rule that out.
I guess it's certainly possible. Warner Brothers just had a huge hit too with Hogwarts Legacy.
Yep.
Selling 12 million copies.
And so they got big expectations for Suicide Squad. Oh boy.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Good luck, Rocksteady.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping. I'm gonna play it because I love Rocksteady.
I'm gonna play it as well. I beat Saints Row. I'll play anything.
You beat... I couldn't even... I'm normally someone who starts a game and I'll finish it. I got 4 hours into Saints Row and I stopped it.
I beat it.
Are you shocked that Saints Row cost over $100 million? I know you made a video about that. I'm pretty sure I saw that thumbnail. Like $100 million for this?
$100 million, yes. I feel like there was just a lot of development issues, and they probably restarted it, rebooted that game like 3 times or something, and that's where a lot of the costs went, not into the game, just into them spinning their wheels trying to start it up in the first place. That
studio Volition is actually located in Illinois, where I live. They're by University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. So they're all from there. They released Agents of Mayhem in like 2018 or 2017. So they've been working on the Saints Row game for like 4 or 5 years. And they're from Illinois. So I sort of like $100 million for like a 5-year project seems about right.
I've thought about that. We just talked about the development cycles for these games. I noticed that a lot of these games, that take a while to make end up being these open world games.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, do we need all these open world games to exist
Mm.
all at the same time?
There's only so much time to play them all. Xbox has an open world game coming, Fable, right? But
Sure.
nobody knows when it's coming. Nobody
Yeah.
knows how far along it is. Nobody knows, how much it's going to cost to make. And I sometimes I sit there and I sort of, it's like, okay, what is taking so long? They revealed it in 2020. We'd even heard rumors back in 2018 that Fable was a thing, right?
Yeah.
And how long does it work? But you're right. It's like open world. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get open world fatigue.
Oh yes, absolutely do.
Where
Absolutely
it's like, I don't
They kinda
wanna
blend
go
together a
through
bit
this.
sometimes.
Yeah, I just played through Atomic Heart, which has an open world. After you get through and I didn't bother. When I was playing through Open Heart, I didn't even bother searching through the open world. I just went from like, okay, get me in my car. I'm going to the next main objective, and that's it. Like, I don't even care about the rest of this open world stuff. So, with Fable, are you? I guess I'll ask you. When do you think we'll see it? When,
Oh,
like,
when
I
we're gonna
mean,
see
when to
Fable.
see it mean like?
Gosh.
I guess that's two questions. When do you think we'll see it again, and when do you think it actually comes out?
I don't know if we're gonna. I don't think we're gonna see it at. I feel like we're not gonna see it at E3 this year either,
Hmm.
or around E3 time. I still think that's something we see next year. So like, yeah, maybe I don't know. You put that in a direct though. That seems like the big showcase moment of like, here's Fable,
That
and it's this
that seems like a
incredible thing.
game that you end the show on,
Yeah.
or you start the show with like boom Fable, and it's like the reveal. I mean, they already did end it with it in 2020, and the reason we bring up is because all these open world games, but also because all these games take forever to make.
They
Do you think
Take
that'll be a
long time.
problem in the future? I've seen Jason Schreier talk about, hey, if you're making a AAA game right now, and it's sort of brand new, you're
Huh.
easily looking at 5 to 6 years, and you're targeting the PS6 or next generation.
Yeah, I think we're gonna run into a point where it's just taking too long to make these games, and it's almost like a breaking point to where they go, look, there's diminishing return on visuals. We've touched the roof essentially of it outside of art style and direction and that sort of thing. What else can we do? And maybe that means they get away from the traditional open world and they start coming up with different ideas for it. I don't know if we. But then it comes back to the idea of, are you okay paying $70 for an experience that's 10 hours? Right. And
yeah,
if it's a good experience and I'm like, wow, that was a lot of fun, I enjoyed it. I mean, yeah, I'd pay full price for a game if it is that solid, that tight experience of 10 hours of just pure enjoyment.
people laugh at that now. Whenever a game comes out that's like 8-9 hours, and it's like, and now it's $70, people are like, it's only like. I sort of feel like game developers have said me like, we have to provide 30 to 40 hours so people
Yeah.
buy and play it. Where if we offer a game that's like 7 hours long, then they're just going to not buy the game at 70. Do you think the price increases hurt some of that, like the extra $10 that they're now stacking?
It's
on
interesting
for
because
everything?
it is $10, right? So in the world of gaming, $10 is a small amount compared to some of the stuff that we end up paying for through the generation, right? Like
Yeah.
a controller might break and you're like, well, okay, whatever, 60, $70 because we'll buy a new one or something. Or your online subscription comes up and you're like, I still don't know why I'm paying for online on a console. But okay, here's $60, that sort of thing, right? So, but the idea is it adds up over time, and you'd like to see the $10 go towards better games, right? But yeah, I just feel like price increases in general will raise expectations, which ends up going into not as much, okay, how good is this game? How good does it look? How good does it run? Is it compelling? Versus how long is this game and how much time can I get out of it for $70? Because then you end up with busy work and bloated titles at times.
Yeah, and I've yet to play a game where I thought to myself, yeah, just totally justified the $10 increase. I've yet to experience, and I mean, as much as I love Arcane, I don't think Redfall is going to be the one that makes me think, yep, totally should have been $70, right?
I'm trying to think if there's anything like because even the cross gen PlayStation stuff, there were $60 versions of some of these games, like a
There
God of
were,
War and
yeah.
stuff. So it is tough because we're still looking for that increased in terms of production value or just something. So I know like Callisto Protocol, that game was 70, right? That came out as
Yes. Well, I think it was 60 on last gen and 70 on current gen. Yeah.
so that was a game that would fall more in line with okay, you could get 8 to 10 hours out of this game or something. And it took them 3 years to make it. Is that a better cycle to go into where you can expect a game to come out from your favorite studio every 3 years, but it's not this 50-hour open world title? It's a 10-hour single player experience, maybe with a multiplayer thing tacked onto it.
Mm. Now Nintendo's even getting on the $70 business.
I've told people for years that they would do it, and I got a lot of pushback for that one. But I just figured Nintendo is gonna look at Zelda and then look over at, I don't know, pick anything from Sony or Microsoft and go, that's worth more than Zelda. No, it's not. It's 70. And Nintendo, they're gonna have DLC for Zelda, it sounds like too.
Yeah, I saw that today. Basically, gonna be some DLC.
This is
so
probably
even
gonna
more.
end up being $100 plus, most likely, when it's all said and done.
Game of the year. I'm already calling it. I think it's already won Game of the Year. You can wrap it up. You don't even need to show up. I think Tears of the and that's I haven't seen any of the trailers for it. It's just like I know how reviewers are when it comes to Zelda. Sequel to Breath of the Wild, right? What is that game, like a 96 or something?
Yeah, it's rated very, very highly. It's a very good game.
So it's like I think that got it all wrapped up there. But another game that's gonna get the $70 increase, another open world game. Open planet is Starfield. So I'm of the opinion that this is Xbox's biggest release since the OG Halo, like biggest new IP. I also think it's the most important game Xbox is going to put out
over Gears.
Yes, I think Starfield has the potential to. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you could say since Gears, but I honestly think Starfield has potential to be way bigger than Gears is right now. And I think it's the most important game for Xbox. Like, I think everyone's eyes are going to be on this. I mean, this is essentially one of the reasons why you spent $7 billion to buy Bethesda. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you looking forward to it?
I'm pretty excited. I'd say the scale right now for me is probably at an 8 because I think they still have a lot more to show with it.
Sure
this
do.
seems like a game that is difficult to show in like a 10-minute spurt. I kind of think they need like half an hour or so, like their own stream, like how we had Suicide Squad, and that just seemed to go on and on and on. I feel like Skyrim in space, Starfield needs that, but like double. Just the amount of stuff they were trying to run through, and then Todd Howard had his podcast with Lex, and he just kept talking about it. I'm like, why didn't you show any of this? Oh, wait, okay, you didn't have enough time to show all this stuff. So it sounds like this game is just incredibly intricate.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it because I understand this is a big project from Bethesda. I know what they've done in the past with basically all of these big single player open world games, right? So I just need to see it, and then maybe it'll go to a 9 or a 10 at that point. And then hopefully we get closer to launch.
Rumors have it, Andy Robinson said it this past week. I know me and Jez talked about it in the podcast and stuff, but that we might be getting a Starfield showcase announcement as early as this week, potentially. I agree with you. They have to show more of this game, and they've been a little quiet. So do you think we get an announcement from Starfield Direct? And what do you want to see from the Direct?
Release date.
You think absolutely 100% they have to end whenever the Direct comes. I've predicted March 15th. That's my guess. And that's not a prediction in quotes, like I know the date already, like I knew the Direct. I don't know.
Oddly specific at a time as well during March, so I know when to be ready.
I'm just looking at the calendars and seeing what's available. I just sort of feel like March 15th slots in very nicely. I do agree with you that if you have to give the release date on this. You can't do what you did with Forza, right? Like you can't just here's Forza,
Yeah, that was kind of rough.
and it was like
Yeah.
coming 2023. You can't do that. Like you have to give the date, right? Right, Spawn? Like it has to be there, right?
Well, if we want it out, say in June,
June, yeah.
I'd like to see the release date at least get just at the end. You can do your little animation again, with them turning on the jets and stuff and preparing for launch. You can do that all over again, sure. But yeah, I do feel like there was some confidence that was shaken when they had to delay that and Redfall, and this would be a good way to kind of bring it all back. Look, Redfall's coming out, then Starfield's coming up like a month and a half later or something into June. And big time release for them. They've had some more time to work on it.
Biggest release. I'm of the opinion, and because June is packed right now. I've always said June's the earliest that Starfield come out. I mean, you got Diablo 4, and you got Street Fighter 6. You have Final Fantasy 16, right?
Yeah.
A lot of big games. If I'm Microsoft and I'm Xbox and I'm Bethesda, especially if I'm Xbox, you know what? I say Starfield's launching June 23rd, the day that Final Fantasy 16 comes out, and I'm just giving the big middle finger to Square Enix. Hey,
23rd.
You don't want to put your games on our system? You want to take Sony's money for exclusivity on Final Fantasy and all this other stuff? All right. Guess what? We're releasing Starfield the same day as Final Fantasy 16. Go F yourself. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they're not on the same. Well, no, they're not really on the same platform, but it'll of course pull away like press and eyeballs and all.
But there's
that.
only there's so many people, right?
That's gonna be tough. I'm gonna have a hard time then because
right.
Final Fantasy, my two most anticipated games that have been announced for this year specifically. We have release dates for Zelda and Final Fantasy. So now you've got Starfield dated then, and all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, I got 3 games from 3 different platforms that I really want to play, and they're within proximity of each other. But those on the same day that'd be tough.
Yeah, maybe the week after, but it's just I sort of feel like Square hasn't been supporting Xbox, so it's like why not? Screw it! Like we're gonna launch our game. Starfield's gonna be on PC. It's the most wishlisted game on Steam right now. It's gonna be day one on Game Pass on the console. PlayStation. 5. Final Fantasy 16 is going to be an exclusive. It's like whatever. You can make the argument that they're not going to compete because they're on different platforms. But I mean, when you talk about like the gaming space and YouTube videos and conversation, you could almost say it could be like a Horizon Forbidden West Elden Ring situation or a Horizon Zero Dawn Breath of the Wild situation where one game gets overshadowed of the other. But that would be me if I wanted to send a message to Square. Screw you.
Yeah.
If not, I would probably put it the week after. So do you agree that you think it's going to be June, or are you leaning into potentially it being second half of the year?
I'd liked it to be in June, but I did think about it, like, what if it ended up falling all the way in November and it's just a clean 1-year delay like we had with Halo?
Delay, yeah.
Just completely. June seems to make sense to me, even though it is crowded. Look, even if it's crowded, no matter what's around it, if you have a lot of confidence in your game and it's lining up to be this big Bethesda release, to me, you assume you're releasing in a vacuum and you just drop it whenever you want, whatever makes sense for you necessarily. So what, Redfall, Forza's somewhere, right? Forza will happen at some point,
September, October, something like that.
There you go. And you have Starfield with Minecraft's doing its spin-off title, and you can sign some other stuff to Game Pass as they go along towards holiday. And if you line it up correctly for you should, whatever else happens in the gaming world, who cares?
Do you think Xbox has anything else releasing this year, end of the year? I know you look at PlayStation. We know Spider-Man 2 is on its way. Probably going to be September. Maybe their holiday game. Sony's typically avoided the holidays, and then they released God of War in November, and that seemed to do incredibly well. So maybe they're a little bit more like, you know what? Let's release Spider-Man in November, right? Let's just dominate November with Spider-Man. Do you think Xbox has anything else on the table for the fall, like something along the lines of like a Hellblade 2?
I'd like to think Hellblade 2. Yeah, Hellblade 2. I'd love to see that. make 2023 for me at this point. I'd love to see them put out like a visually impressive game for the
Hmm.
Series X, and Hellblade seems like it lines up with that. Every time they've shown it, especially that snippet of I know I'm sure very controlled gameplay, yes, but just visually speaking, at the Game Awards when they showed that, it was impressive stuff. So I would like to see that, if nothing else, to say, okay, look, this is our one of our technical quote unquote masterpieces that isn't a racing game, right? I think that'd be great. So but at the other hand, I mean, Avowed's out there somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's more of a 2024 title.
Yeah,
Maybe early
I still feel like
2024.
they're lining up a lot for 2024, but I'd love to see Hellblade 2 sneak into 2023 as a holiday title.
Yeah, because I feel like if you could get out Minecraft Legends and Redfall and Starfield and Forza Motorsport and all the Game Pass games that you're having, like right now, Atomic Heart just came out. You got Wolong Fallen Dynasty coming out this
That's
Friday.
next Friday.
You got
Yeah,
MLB 23 coming out at the end of the month, right? Who knows what the rest of the year is going to hold? You got a lot of high profile indies like Benedict Fox and stuff. And if you add a Hellblade 2 to that, and then if the ABK deal goes through, and then you add Diablo 4, who knows what happens with Call of Duty, you're probably looking at a really good year. Not to mention, we haven't even talked about like Hi-Fi Rush. I was going to ask you, what do you think about what do you think about that Shadow Drop? What do you think about Hi-Fi Rush? Did you get a chance to play it?
So I did. I was playing through Hi-Fi Rush, and then a lot of stuff hit, and I'm going back to it. Basically, I play it for like half an hour a night now, just about, and just go through it. And it's a nice mellow game to play after attempting PSVR 2 that night.
So you did get your PSVR 2.
Oh yeah.
Did you tear it down, or are you actually playing it?
I'm actually using it now. I thought about tearing it down, but Sony did a nice little teardown for it. And to be honest, it's a pretty straightforward headset in terms of build and all of this. I was really curious about the cable and if we could replace the cable that runs to it. And it looks like you kind of can, kind of can't. So that was my main concern. But playing Hi-Fi Rush, I do enjoy that one a lot. And you know what? The interesting thing about that is the digital future that we just talked about, where there's no physical copies, plays into the idea of Shadow Drops being much more regular, like a Hi-Fi Rush, because there's nothing to put on store shelves. So that'd be one benefit, because Nintendo Shadow Drop Metroid Prime Remastered, and they had actually kind of a difficult time in certain regions getting physical copies out there. So they just weren't there anyway.
Now, Jez had a conspiracy theory about that, about the Metroid Prime thing. He thinks that Nintendo saw the success that Hi-Fi Rush had by shadow dropping, and that they decided to shadow drop Metroid at the Direct, even though it was probably planned to come out like whenever the physical disc was, a couple weeks later or whatever. Do you think that could have been a possibility?
Because Nintendo they still use fax machines at their their offices. Nintendo is the most what's that, on an island company I've ever seen. So Metroid Prime they could have announced it. They were most likely supposed to have announced it last year, and they didn't. So I guess they could have looked at trends and been like, let's shadow drop this thing. It's possible. I don't know if Tango would have been the thing that would push them over the edge just based on Nintendo and how they operate, but it's possible. The one thing I will say, I do like the idea of these shadow drops becoming more regular for games that aren't just, indie titles. They're cool, but like a Metroid Prime Remastered or something big where there's like, it's available now. It'll show up in stores in a couple of weeks if you want it, but we know the digital split is growing every day, so we're going to play into that, and we're going to get that immediate FOMO if you don't buy it digitally, and then maybe you'll buy it again physically or something.
Yeah, what do you think about the people that believe Starfield should be shadow dropped? Like, we should be at this event, and then when Todd looks at the camera at the end, like, you want to know when Starfield's launching? And he's just like, right now.
I'm okay. That means I can play Starfield that day.
That
won't be on the same day as Final Fantasy 16.
That'd be great. I just sort of feel like you can't do that it works for some games, but doesn't work for a lot of the others, right?
Hey, it worked for Halo.
Well, yeah, that was the multiplayer. They did shadow drop that. Yeah.
Hey, we just need to start. You know what? We need a Starfield beta. That's what we need. They can shadow drop it.
Oh,
The quote unquote beta, the beta, quote unquote, the full version will launch next week.
Yeah. Have you heard about the group known as the Marchers? The group of people that believe Starfield is releasing in March?
Really?
Oh yeah. There's
Interesting.
in the Xbox community there's people that call themselves the Marchers, and they believe Starfield will be shadow dropped or at least release. And the current date they're looking at is 3/23/23. As because Todd loves numbers and dates and apparently, right? So
3/23/23. Interesting.
would you want to play Starfield on the same day that Resident Evil 4 comes out?
No, oh man. See, this is the problem we're running into. All these games are grouping up because I have to play Resident Evil 4 remake when it releases.
So do I.
There's no question. I have to play it. So actually, that's a game. I'd say Starfield would have to wait a bit. I got to go through Resident Evil 4 remake.
All right.
I do.
Really quick about Resident Evil. So we got the remake coming out, Resident Evil 4. What do you remake next?
Oh yeah, that's a good. Oh, you know what? That's interesting. Everyone keeps saying Code Veronica.
Yeah, do you go Code Veronica? Do you do 5? Do you do 6?
You know what? I do think they could. As weird as it sounds, they could remake 5, and people would do a sideways glance and then be like, "Yeah, but now we can see Chris punch a boulder in 4K." It is weird because we also talked about when that news came out that there's gonna be like some weird Horizon Zero Dawn remaster or something.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? To me, if they want to remake it, why not? Whatever.
I
it's
say
still
go
weird,
back to the beginning.
The first one.
I say you remake Resident Evil 1 again.
Ooh, that could be cool.
Because the GameCube version is great, but
I like it.
Make Resident Evil 1 kind of like Resident Evil 2, just a big mansion with the door. Like, I sort of feel like that's the way to go, because it's like you're not going to do Resident Evil 0, right?
No, I like the idea of that though. Going back to the first one, yeah, I'd be on board with that.
And it's because it's almost like, do you need to remake Code Veronica? Probably not. 5 or 6.
People are calling for that. They need to come up with a cool name like Marchers.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, just go back to the beginning and remake Resident Evil 1. And I don't know where you go from there, Maybe Dino Crisis. How about that? Do Dino Crisis.
Oh, everybody keeps calling for Dino Crisis. My gosh.
I mean,
I would like to. We already got Dino Crisis. Exoprimal coming out this year, right? There we go.
Yeah, I think so.
No one knows.
So Xbox is doing their developer direct. What'd you think of it? What'd you think of their version of the direct? Is that something you want to see them do maybe a couple times a year? Are you down for that format?
Oh yeah. I liked it. The thing I liked about it was, okay, so I didn't like when they were doing Inside Xbox, and for some reason they felt the need to do 2 hours of it. No clue why, because there was about 15 minutes of information in 2 hours, and they did this thing where they sat on a couch for a while talking about nothing really. It just felt like a waste of time. Kind of like how we were talking about those open world games that feel padded out. It was like that. So when they went to this format and it was cut and dry, it was quick, they were jumping around, it was well edited, and they did that thing where they would zoom out from the shot and be like, hey, look how it kind of informal this is. They would act like they were still setting up for the direct while they were filming the direct. And I enjoyed jumping around to the different studios where you had 10 minutes per, not even. You saw the people, they introduced their own game. You didn't have a host necessarily that would banter or any of that. It was quick to the point. You got in and out. And that, I think, is the best way to go about it now in this climate. Technically, you don't need an E3 or a live stage anymore with the technology we have and the ability to stream stuff. Even though I like it as more the, I guess, traditionalist with kind of the games media and the spectacle of E3 and what we used to have back in the day. I like the format and I hope they continue with it. My only thing was, when they first said Developer Direct, the name just didn't really hit with me.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why. It's straightforward and it's like, hey, developers will talk directly to you. It's like, all right. And I guess maybe Xbox Direct was too on the nose to Nintendo Direct.
It's also
close.
Developer _Direct. You gotta speak to the kiddos.
They got the special characters from the keyboard in there.
Xbox and Bethesda present Developer Direct, and in the future it'll be Xbox and Bethesda and Activision and Blizzard and King.
Just call it Direct. Just call it
Developer
Direct
Direct.
Xbox, and we'll nod back to the first Xbox code name.
Well, I even saw somebody after the recent Nintendo Direct there that was like, they need to change the directs. This isn't working anymore.
Oh, I saw. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was Games Industry.
Yeah, I think that was
And
Chris Strain. Yeah.
everyone was basically like, "Why?"
It's like, why? What? It's the perfect formula. Why would you change it? Oh, it's because I'm not excited for it. Well, that sounds like a you problem, buddy.
I mean, it's just a string of commercials with them voicing over it somewhat. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not really sure what you would even change it to. I don't know. It's just a bunch of information tightly compacted, and then you just go about your day and be excited for a couple announcements.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like I saw that and I was just like, what? They perfected it. It's like, what would you? It's not like they're gonna be Reggie's gonna be getting up on stage anytime soon. Like how they used
Maybe that's
to,
what it
right?
is. Maybe that's like some of the nostalgia bleeding through of going to a special event, big stage spectacle, and people messing up on live and stuff. That kind of thing. I don't know. I think those days are kind of past us now. So the only time I think we'll see some of those live presentations outside of Microsoft, I guess, doing their E3 kind of not E3 presentation is when a new system is ready to be unveiled, and maybe Nintendo wants to do what they did with the Switch, where they get media together and they stand up on a stage, and maybe Sony does something similar. But otherwise, the year-to-year stuff, I kind of think it's pre-recorded and well edited.
Yeah. Well, I know Xbox will definitely have a live show. I think this year they'll be at
Yes.
E3, so they'll have their live show. They love the crowd and the energy.
Hold on,
that
they're
the
not at
fans
E3.
bring.
They're
Well,
not at
I
E3,
mean,
we're not at E3.
technically-
Your badge won't get you in now.
technically you won't be at E3, but I
Gotta pay
mean,
at the
it'll be
door.
during the E3 season, I guess, or the
Summer Game Fest.
the
is
Summer
claiming
Games
that.
Fest season. Keeley is one.
He's claiming that. He just
Yeah.
shows up. It's not part of the show, and he just kind of puts a little logo around it.
There's also been a lot of talk about what's going on between PlayStation and Xbox regarding certain games running better on the PlayStation 5.
Mhm.
Hogwarts Legacy recently, as well as Atomic Heart. Do you think there's anything to that outside of just, I think I saw some Digital Foundry guys saying like it just most likely is the PS5 version is getting most of the time on it, and it's just Xbox
Most of the
isn't-
attention. Oh, okay. Most of the attention. I see.
like the
I see.
attention, like it's getting most of the dev work, and you don't have unlimited time and resources, so you gotta sort of do it. Like, I guess the question I've been posed to you is like Series X was positioned as the most powerful console ever,
Mhm.
and it really sort of, at least in my views, I've been perfectly happy with it. Granted, I have a VRR television, so like I don't really get frame drops, but do you think the system has lived up to the hype that a lot of people were giving it before this gen? With, even if Series X has the lead over PlayStation, it's usually in resolution, maybe a couple frame rates here or there. It seems to be a lot closer than it used to. What do you think about? What do you think's is there something wrong with the dev tools on the Series X, or is it just like something else?
I wish I was a developer and I
Yeah, I
could tell
guess-
everyone exactly what the problem was, but it's just, as you see with the Digital Foundry, it just comes down to speculation. Okay, what platform would these studios realistically look at and go, okay, well, we have the hard numbers for console sales, and there's one SKU here, but there's two SKUs here, kind of thing. We split our time up in 3 separate directions because we get working on the Series S, the X, and then the PS5, and just happens the PS5 gets the bulk of it on that end because there's not a PS5S or something, or that's all the speculation right now. But really, to me, most people aren't going to notice the difference. We're talking like frames of, okay, this one's doing 58 and this one's doing 56 or something. The resolution
Yeah.
drops slightly between the two. Maybe if you had both systems side by side and you're playing them, and even then I think it's more or less just you're zooming in, you're looking at these little graphs, and you're declaring some sort of weird victory one over the other. I think what it would come down to, and what it should come down to, are your first party developers taking advantage of the system when they're set to develop specifically for it and showing what it can do. And that's just kind of the way. Third parties are a toss up either way, because some I'm sure get better performance out of the Xbox versus the PS5, vice versa. But you need the first parties to pull through. And for Microsoft, they have, they have some really good looking racing games, right?
Yeah.
They look good, but I think people are still kind of sitting back waiting for that, like Fable to get shown. And it's like, whoa, this looks crazy,
It
and
blows our mind, right?
yeah, something like that. That's what people are. Or Perfect Dark. It's another example, right? They're looking for that to happen, and it's just taking time. And unfortunately for Starfield, and just kind of the way it is with Bethesda games, with how what they aim for over graphical fidelity, they try to wow you with the idea of, okay, look how living this world, look how really how vast this world feels and how alive it feels, as opposed to look how shiny those rocks are. So I don't know if Starfield's going to come out and be this head and shoulders spectacle of just visual fidelity. But that's why I'm thinking something like Hellblade 2 would really impress people, because Ninja Theory, very talented.
Very, very talented. That's my most anticipated Xbox game. Like I love the original, and it was like, I want to see what they can do. Like now you're with the Xbox, the bigger budget. You have, I think, twice as many devs working on it. And it's just like, okay, what did Xbox and Microsoft bring to the relationship? How is your game going to be improved?
It seems like they're getting more time, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see the gameplay. Like, I know we saw that, what was gameplay, but I want to see like the combat, right? I want to see how improved that is. And you mentioned Starfield, and even now we're having discussions about whether or not the game's gonna have a 60 frames mode on Series X.
Yeah, that's I do wonder, are we to that point now where we are actually having legit conversations around frame rate over visuals? Because I feel like even last gen we didn't really get there. Now I see people much more aware of 60 frames over 30.
It's because
to the point where they're like, hey, you know what? I don't mind if things look a little flat if I can have 60.
It's because like everything this gen has been 60, and I think people finally realize how amazing games are at 60 frames versus 30. Where last gen, you were on those, what was the CPUs they were using? The Jaguar cores,
Jaguar
right?
cores, yeah. Those were
and it was a lot of open world games, so everything was 30. And the only 60 games you got were really shooters or maybe even racers. But then because of cross-gen, everything started off, with everything being 60. And you could switch in between real time. Like, I remember playing Spider-Man Miles Morales on the PS5, right? And I just switch in just to see what it was like. And I'm like, I can't play this at 30 frames. It's a slideshow. Especially when you can feel the difference. Sure, maybe it doesn't look as good, but give me the frame rate all day. And then people complained when Gotham Knights came out and was like, hey, we don't even got a 60 frames. Or Plague's Tale. And, now with like Xbox Series X, the most powerful console, and what I think is the biggest Xbox game, the most important Xbox game, people would be like, that would be an L if Starfield comes out and doesn't have a performance mode and it's just 30 frames,
Yeah, that it will be. I will admit it will be kind of rough if it comes out and it's just 30. Yeah, that would be tough. Tough. I hope to have the 60.
Would you play it on your Xbox, or would you play it on your PC then?
I'd probably play it. I mean, it's Game Pass. I have it on both most likely and go between them.
So you go between them. Do you like
that? Is nice, and Game Pass does make it easier for that at least.
Yeah. Do you like Microsoft's vision of the future of basically play where you want, when you want? You play it on your Xbox or on your PC, or streaming on your your phone, or app on your TV, and everything's all that sort of stuff, versus Sony's like, well, we'll release the game and then maybe 2 years later we'll release it on PC. Is it just like it's like, I guess
I like what Microsoft's doing for the convenience factor of it, and the idea of not ending up buying the game twice, basically.
Right.
That is nice. The idea that they're going more and more, really Microsoft, while they do provide the Xbox system, obviously, they are showing that you don't necessarily need an Xbox to play their games, which is the idea of it's Xbox being more of a service brand over the hardware box brand is just, I think, the strategy that they had to go towards in general, so that they could have it make sense for a service-based company that is Microsoft. But I think that seems to come up. People were wondering, okay, was the Xbox going third party or anything? I think an Xbox box will just always exist because it makes sense for them to have something that you can just sell to a consumer and say, hey, here's our brand. This is our box you put in your living room. And it's worked even for like Surface and stuff. Like they make computers technically for Windows,
Right.
even
Yeah.
though their big business is just providing Windows to OEM companies. So I think it's good overall for consumers and just convenience. But again, the traditionalist in me looks at the business side and goes, well, you make a game exclusive, so you sell a box, then you build on top of that. But Microsoft is they're still running what I would deem as kind of an experiment since no one else is really doing it. So
Well, it does.
I
Yeah. I
just-
mean, it seems like Sony's pushing more to PC. I think it's also because games are so much more expensive to make, and it's
Yep,
like PCs
they are.
right there, right? And I sort of feel, say what you will, but I sort of feel like not being on PC day one is a detriment because I look at Horizon Forbidden West and how much people love that game, and then I look at Elden Ring, which came out the week after, but was literally everywhere, especially on PC, and how it just dominated the conversation because then you have 10 million people on PC playing it as well, talking about it. You know, I sort of feel like I know Sony's business is more, we need to sell the console first, and then
Yeah.
maybe worry about revenue later. Where Microsoft's like, you're right. Microsoft's like, well, we don't care where you play as long as you play. As long as you're subscribing to Game Pass. We don't care if you got a console or if you're on PC or if you're on mobile. But I do wonder how much that changes in the future, right?
Yeah. The interesting thing though about Game Pass is it's not necessarily like a console because when we restart generations, you go back to zero with a console.
Yeah.
Like Game Pass would just consistently move along, so it would be something that you would assume would accrue numbers in just a straight upwards diagonal line almost forever, as long as they can make it happen. But even if it flattened off, if you ever get to Disney Plus numbers or something like that,
Ooh.
where it's like, oh, hey, look, we have 300 million subscribers. It's like, oh,
I think that
well,
might be out of reach for like a gaming. I mean, because it's not even what usually they talk about 250 million people that buy a console in any given generation.
well, what if Game Pass over time evolves into entertainment and media and all
Sure.
kinds, and it just ends
Yeah,
up
okay.
tying into this one SKU
Like
of
what?
Game
What
Pass.
if Microsoft buys Netflix in the future, right?
I mean,
And
they've
then-
played around with ideas of giving you a month free of some service or
Sure.
something, right? You know, hey, 15 years from now, who knows what gaming's going to look like?
No, I mean, hell, at the beginning of the who thought Microsoft and Sony? Well, they're not really playing nice right now, but crossplay. Nobody ever thought crossplay would be
Yeah.
a thing, right?
What?
Like playing with your friends on PlayStation or Nintendo. Like nobody thought that would ever happen, and then it did because it makes sense for developers and the games they're building and stuff. So yeah, you're right. Who knows? Hell, in 15 years, or maybe even sooner. Maybe we'll have that often talked about and rumored Xbox Game Pass on the Nintendo Switch 2 or something, where
Hey,
where
you
the
never
Switch
know.
2 is just an Xbox handheld. Wouldn't that be? Wouldn't that be?
I do
something?
wonder. I do wonder if that would happen with, because we've heard rumors that, as you said, Nintendo. I'm sure talks have happened, because I feel like Phil Spencer even mentioned at one point that they had talked with PlayStation about getting Game Pass there.
And
I'm
Jim
sure the
Ryan
talks-
laughed at him.
I'm sure the
That's
talks
right, yeah.
happen, but I do wonder if these companies like Nintendo, or like, they look at it and go, well, okay, what does that do for us? You know, they have their little chart of pros and cons, and I feel like they're still trying to see what the subscription model like Microsoft is proposing, what effect that has on their ecosystem overall when it comes to like buying games. That comes up a lot, right? If you have Game Pass, you're not necessarily
Yeah.
going to buy a lot of these games, and that could then go elsewhere. Like, I will wait for this game to go into Game Pass rather than buy it day one. So I think that's also why Sony is still very timid about putting a game in their service day one and maybe wait a year or two for it to go in, or even just going PC day one. Because I feel like they think, well, if we do it, it's gonna be hard for us to go back and then not do it.
But it's like you sort of have to for certain types of games. Let me get Last of Us Faction is going to come out eventually.
Yes. Yep.
That's a service game that kind of has to be on PC.
That's got to
day
be PC
one.
one. Yeah, it's gonna be PC
right?
day one, right? I assume so. Yeah.
I would assume so. I mean, Herman Hulst has talked about like, yeah, you know, the games as a service have to be, but
Yep.
like you said, like once you open up Pandora's box,
I've been
sort
preparing
of,
the Sony fan base for this for a while. I've been saying, hey, what these games eventually go day and date, and they're like, nah, no, no. I was like, all right, I think it's gonna be a live service game. Like, no, no, no. And Herman Holtz has interviews like, I think the live service games might be a little different. Like, he's prepping everyone. He's
yeah,
letting you guys know. I've been trying to tell you for years.
baby
That and the
steps.
$70 Nintendo games.
The
So,
mistake Xbox made in 2013 was forcing everybody into their vision immediately without, right? It's like they basically came out as like, this is the new way of doing things and you will all do it this way, and everyone is like, no. And then
yeah.
Sony was like, hey, the way you've always done it, we're gonna keep on doing it that way, and we're gonna be $100 cheaper. And it was like, all right, well, generation's over for Xbox. But if Xbox had just taken it and just led people step by step, right? Get like
Oh,
just
Don
done
Magic
it
was way ahead of his
over
time.
over the course of a whole generation. Because look at it, because remember back then, 2013, people were like, digital, pfft, we don't want digital, and now it's like what 70-30 is the split. Even some companies are higher than others, but it's
I
basically.
feel like it's higher than that on Xbox right now.
Oh, I would.
personally.
Yeah, it's got to be like 85.
I think it's
85,
like, I think it might be
15 or
85,
something.
15. Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's definitely up there. And okay, so Game Pass, I'm sure you love it. I love it. A lot of people that use it love it, right?
Mhm.
I just played Atomic Heart. I'm gonna play Wolong. A lot of great games I've discovered there. Do you find it frustrating that the discussion about Game Pass isn't so much like how it can help you discover games that you may never have played before, but at least in on Twitter and social media, it's, is Game Pass sustainable? There's Game Pass is just for poor people. Do you see a lot of that stuff online? Do you like not? I don't know. It always seems to come up in conversation about the service. Like, this is too good to be true. How can it last forever?
Well,
Like,
I think if someone's willing to admit this too good to be true, then they should subscribe to it immediately
yes,
and just steal money from the corporation. Just steal all the money you can from the
$10 a
company.
month. $10 a month, and look what you're all getting, right? It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I sort of feel like the conversation around it can be toxic to a certain degree, because like nobody knows the numbers. We don't really know like what Microsoft's spending on it or what they're paying out. All we know is the developers seem to get a payout, and we've seen developers come out and say, "Hey, this is taking the pressure off of us," because basically the game's in the black. But then they'll have people
Yeah.
being like, "No, you got to support the devs, and you got to do this, and you got to do that," and it's just the conversation should be more about, "Hey, what cool games did you discover
I
on
think
the service?"
I think it definitely is dependent though on say the size of the studio or the game. So if you're in that case, let's say you're a smaller studio and Microsoft really wants your game in Game Pass and they show up with enough money to fund the entirety of your development costs and then a little extra, you're like, "Oh, well this and they're gonna release it on other platforms too, right?" Like
Yeah.
maybe it's a multi-plat and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, that takes a ton of pressure off of us. Let's do that." But then you have Take Two, who's like, it doesn't make sense for us. Well, yeah, you're launching Grand Theft Auto 6 and the internet's going to like legitimately
Sure.
break when you do. So like I get that. Or Activision even mentioned, well, it doesn't make sense for us. Yeah, you're not gonna like, in their mind, why would we put Call of Duty into the service when we're gonna just sell, I don't know, 5 million, 6 million copies on Xbox, no sweat. You know, like so again, it depends on that. But to me, Game Pass is just it's just another tool for consumers and gamers to find other games. And if you truly believe it's that good of a deal, why wouldn't you? If it's so hard to believe, it must be a good deal.
Yeah. All right, so now we gotta talk about my favorite subject in the world. The reason I don't really haven't made a lot of videos recently is because I'm completely sick of the ABK stuff, because it's constantly ruined the Xbox narrative for over a year now.
And the
And
anniversary last year is the anniversary
Yeah.
for an acquisition announcement.
a whole year, and it's just been just ABK stuff, and it's just it was fun for a while, John. It was fun for a while when we had Jim Ryan out there talking, right? Because Jim Ryan, he says some stuff, some stupid stuff. I get to make fun of it, right?
Mhm.
And it was great. And then, well, they wisened up. They didn't let him talk anymore. So it's just Phil been doing interviews. He just did one recently about how if the deal doesn't go through, it doesn't mean Xbox is over, because we're going to be talking about the idea of Xbox being sold off, because that was the thing that just came up out today. But how are you feeling about a whole ABK thing? Like, I know you put out your weekly videos every single day. I think, 7 a.m. or 8 a.m.?
It depends on time zone. For me, Eastern time, it's 8 a.m. But I understand. Some people tell me they see it when they're driving into work later on in the day. It goes out everywhere. So
when do you normally record those videos? By the way, for the following day, do you record them in the afternoon? Do you
late afternoon, evening-ish. Yeah, just to make sure I get a good view of everything that's going on.
Right. So how you've been talking about? Well, I also do the podcast, and ABK is a constant but I would imagine you are constantly talking about it too. Are you just completely over this like I am? It's just kind of just like it's constantly something different every single day in the videos and all that sort of stuff. The ABK.
I mean, I think at times some of the information is kind of entertaining. It's kind of funny, but to me, yes, I'm prepared for this deal to finish, and just at this point, just let it go through, and that's that. It's for me. I mean, if you really think about it, for someone like me or you, it's not going to change a lot. Call of Duty will be Call of Duty every year. Even this year, they've pivoted and they're like, we are going to make a premium Call of Duty. Yeah, because it's going to sell a lot, of course.
You're not giving up that money. You're definitely...
Call of Duty will consistently be Call of Duty. Yeah, I guess it would go into Game Pass day one, which great, sure. But for me, it's just become kind of a circus at this point, to where even Nintendo somehow is involved, and it was just that they were happy to be there because Microsoft was like, hurry up and sign this deal and you get Call of Duty for 10 years. And they're like, all right, I guess. Basically.
Yeah, but Nintendo doesn't count, though, according to regulators. Not part of the same market.
That is kind of funny because they say that, but obviously all the money, goes into a pool and then it gets divided up based on entertainment dollars. So you'll put gaming up against cinema and all these other things, but Nintendo somehow is like,
they're not
on their own.
What was it called? The high performance console market with Sony and Microsoft. They're off on their own,
The interesting thing is Microsoft showed up with the chart, right, that showed 80-20, and people were wondering, where is Nintendo? And the idea is, well, the regulator said Nintendo isn't part of the deal, so they made a chart without Nintendo, basically.
Yeah, and it was just like, well, you said Nintendo doesn't exist, so we're just going to present.
I'm like,
the
that's something I would have done. That's great.
Yeah. So you see, I've been listening to a lot of people talk about it, and I've yet to come across a good explanation for why it shouldn't go through. Every single person who says it should be blocked is basically saying like it should be blocked because it's Microsoft and they're $2 trillion company, and we can't let them have more power. And it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, but what does it have to do specifically about Xbox? Because Xbox has been consistently in third place, right?
Yeah.
They were a joke of the industry for an entire generation. They're only really strong here in the US, and, getting ABK and stuff will inject a lot of revenue, make them more competitive, let them compete against Apple and Google in the mobile space. I've never really bought any of the arguments about why it should be blocked. It's like, oh, cloud streaming, you might be dominant in cloud streaming. It's like cloud streaming is not even a thing at this point, right? So it's like, it's like, oh, the subscription market game. It was like, yeah, but like Sony has their own subscription market. They just don't want to put their own games into it. And like Sony bought a streaming service and that completely failed with it. Like, so Microsoft should basically have their arms tied behind their back because they're the only ones investing in streaming and cloud gaming. And it's like, well, no, we're going to penalize you because you're the only one doing this, because what if other companies want to come into the space and like, oh, well, you can't, no, Call of Duty is too big for subscription services, even though Sony has huge games but won't even put, like, none of the arguments made sense of, like, oh, it could ruin like, PlayStation's not getting ruined, especially with the idea of, like, Microsoft not even removing Call of Duty from them. It's like,
they'll keep selling it.
Right?
Why wouldn't they keep selling it there?
It's like there's too much money to be left. It's left on the table. So I don't really understand all the arguments. I guess people like to say, well, Microsoft just buys solutions to their problems or whatever. Which, okay, fair enough. But
my thing with this though is apparently the timeline of events was that Activision was looking to be
Yeah.
purchased. So they went to Microsoft. Microsoft didn't show up and just be like, I'm buying this. Activision started putting feelers out, trying to, because first you got to figure out who can even buy
Yeah.
us.
Who
If
can
we're
buy
when,
them?
I feel like Activision was kind of setting up as, I don't want to say they're going to go through some struggles, but I kind of feel like they were getting to a position where they realized creating these Call of Duties could become difficult. Think about how many people had to get on the most recent Call of Duty to get it out in time. It was basically everyone at Activision.
Yeah.
They had Spyro developers working on like lighting and stuff and some of the multiple. It was crazy, right? So I kind of feel like Activision realized that they were mostly seeing major success with Call of Duty and kind of having a harder time with other things around it. And you get to a position where you're primed to be sold, and they realized that there was a lot of money for the payout, and they thought, let's see. And I'm sure Tencent probably was talked to Apple. Think of the typical big
Amazon.
guys, Amazon, and Microsoft saw it and said, you know what? This makes sense. And I think there's a lot of short-sightedness with this deal in terms of its effect on the market. Because people, obviously Xbox, because it's Call of Duty, they're like, well, it's Call of Duty, it's Xbox. But I mean, Microsoft, like Satya Nadella has talked about things outside of gaming. Like the big push that I think they're trying to sell it on outside of just, oh, it's an Xbox game, is mobile and the metaverse stuff. Because I know people hate to hear about metaverse stuff, but that is a legitimate thing that all these companies are dumping ungodly amounts of money into, like just stupid amounts. Meta is seemingly on a crash course for zero at this point
It
because
does
of
seem
it.
like that, right?
But they're desperate to make it work because I kind of think they believe a future 10 or 15 years from now that has that justified. Like, think about when we were in high school and we didn't have phones, or you had payphone. Everyone had a landline.
I think I had a pager in high school.
Yeah, like
And
think
then
about
even
that
still,
world.
you had to go to a payphone or somebody's house to make the phone call, right?
Yeah, and then now think about that world, and then go 16 or 17 years into the future, where we have not only skipped over the ability to walk around with a cell phone and talk to people, but we also have gotten past the want to talk to people on phones. Think about people now, they just want text messages. They don't want to talk to
Yeah.
anyone, nothing. Like, the world changes so rapidly right now with all of the information and the internet that the future now appears to be, oh, someday we'll just virtually talk to each other in a world that's created with this metaverse thing. And there's a massive race right now to get there. And I think the biggest theory to sell the metaverse is through entertainment, because you'll jump through hurdles and hoops to get to these places where entertainment is there with escapism. And Microsoft said, hey, this is for the metaverse as well. And it makes sense. If you have strong intellectual properties that people enjoy and want to play, they'll jump through hoops to do it. I bought a PSVR 2 because I want to experience all this stuff from Sony that they're putting out. You pay for your online subscription fee because you want to play Halo or whatever it is, Call of Duty. So it's that's the main strategy. And I think it's much more lucrative than Call of Duty and Game Pass.
Yeah. I mean, they even talked about like mobile, right? Microsoft want an Xbox presence on the mobile side of things, and Blizzard, great PC developer, and Microsoft has big plans for PC, right? So it's like
Microsoft is looking at this as an acquisition against Google, Meta, Amazon, not Sony.
Yeah, but the talk today was interesting because there's always something. Like last week, they made the deal with Nintendo, 10 years to bring Call of Duty, yay! And my buddy was like, shout out to all the Activision devs, and I'll have to make a Call of Duty game for the Switch with technical parity and content parity.
Hey, you know what? That could end up being the most interesting Call of Duty, as weird as that sounds. Have you ever played any of the Call of Duty games on the Wii?
No, I didn't play them on the Wii.
Believe it or not, some of these Call of Duty games that they made were incredibly interesting because of those pair downs and things they had to figure out. It's kind of cool to see how it played out and what they had to do to get it there. And you know what? It had pointer controls, which were more accurate than any of the controllers at the time.
Yeah,
pretty funny.
But I saw some of the arguments, like even PlayStation and the CMA made some arguments, like nobody wants it on the Switch, and it's like, you sure? Because Apex Legends and Fortnite are on the Switch. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure Nintendo would love Call of Duty and like Warzone 2 because their audience. There's this like joke, like the CMA is like, oh, the basically the Nintendo audience is kids, and it's like, well, that's not true. Like the Nintendo audience is basically the same age as everybody else. It's like, why wouldn't they want Warzone? And then they signed the deal with Nvidia, right? Which it's like, hey, we'll put all of our games on your streaming service, right?
Yep.
And that still leaves out like Call of Duty and what they're gonna do there with PlayStation. But I don't know if you saw this, but man, some of the people in the media really kind of had their masks come off in a way that I haven't really seen in a while, where they sort of felt like the deal was going to get blocked before, and then that meeting happened on Tuesday, and now it sort of seems like maybe it's going to pass.
Mhm.
And there's just some people in the media that do not like this idea for whatever reason, like consolidation,
Oh, interesting.
or whatever. Or like I've even seen like people in the media who are very much like, before this whole thing was
Mhm.
all about like unions, right? Unions are great. People need to unionize. And then
Mhm.
like all the unions support this. And like all these journalists who wouldn't talk about the media, who wouldn't talk about, the union stuff, suddenly were very silent now that the unions support the deal, right? So I sort of see this all across from some, like, especially in the UK publications. And then today, interestingly, Phil Spencer had an interview where he talked about, hey, Xbox ain't going away if the deal doesn't go through. It's not like a linchpin or whatever. When even Hogue Law said that maybe Phil can make the argument that, hey, you know what? If you block this deal, Xbox might disappear. So you're using your regulatory
I would've said
power,
that.
right? Like, make it seem like this is dire. But he's not. He's saying, no, we'll still be good. Andy Robinson then came out and said, like, industry pundits are basically saying that if the deal doesn't go through, potentially, maybe, that Microsoft sells off Xbox. And that very important people have told him this, in anonymous sources and stuff. And I sort of feel like we've been through this last generation. And
I feel like
now,
this follows Xbox since
yes,
it was
it does, doesn't it?
its inception.
Like, oh, they're gonna sell off Xbox now, and I don't know, like the idea, like I'm sure there are people talking about it, but the way the information is presented is like those people are infallible, which you know, because I've even seen some articles written about it already. I think you're gonna talk about it in your video tomorrow, right? I'm sure there are industry people that will say, you know, if this deal doesn't go through, maybe Xbox sells. But it's presented as like 100% truth gospel, as like a certain thing. But it's never presented as like, well, is this person infallible? Like, you know what I mean? Because even I've sent that information to like some of my Xbox friends, and they're just kind of like rolling their eyes about it. You know?
Right.
Yeah, this is Asati who's like, all in on gaming. We're investing all this money, and you know, it's just funny how you go from Xbox has bad management and Xbox has no games, and we need to stop this deal because Xbox would be a monopoly even though Xbox has no games, to Microsoft is selling Xbox. Like, I don't know. Isn't it? What do you feel about all this? I sort of feel it's ridiculous, but apparently it's a thing.
I mean, I feel like you could probably find an investor in Microsoft and they would want you to get rid of Xbox. I'm sure they exist. Like, it's probably not difficult to find someone who's, you know, a longtime investor. Is like, why we keep playing around with all this gaming stuff? It's office, it's business, it's in the workplace. So sure, I bet you could find people who want to sell Xbox who have actual investments in Microsoft. But like, we've been through this, as I mentioned, basically since the inception of the Xbox. Like, is Microsoft really serious in gaming? Are they getting rid of it? What's going on? And we always end up at the same destination of, no, it's still here. I mean,
Yeah.
I will say with the Xbox One is probably, there was rumors that they were close to just being like, you know, let's start pulling back on this whole thing. And somehow then they bought Minecraft, and ended up buying Bethesda and ZeniMax. Now they're about to try to buy Activision Blizzard. It seems like the actions are saying something completely different right now. Even if you don't have Activision Blizzard, let's say that gets blocked or something. I don't know, something happens, right? It falls apart. You still bought ZeniMax.
Yeah.
Like you bought Mojang, and Minecraft is still incredibly successful. So the actions don't line up with what's being talked about or predicted here.
You're right. I would imagine there are probably some investors at Microsoft who'd be like, yeah, we could probably sell Xbox 100%, right? And maybe there are people speculating about what happens next. What is Plan B if this deal doesn't go through for Microsoft, right? Where does Phil Spencer go from here, and sort of things? And I would imagine there are people who be like, I don't know, man. Maybe they just sell, bro.
Yeah.
Like whatever all the stuff that they've done to rehabilitate the brand because it wasn't in a good place, right? It was basically within a joke within Microsoft. They get it removed out from the Windows division from Terry Myerson. Phil gets a spot at the EVP on the table with Satya. He gets more funding, buys more studios, gets even more funding, buys Bethesda, and then like Activision Blizzard goes through all those problems, all those sexual harassment stories. Their stock tanks to the point where somebody can buy them. And it's like, all right, we're going to spend $70 billion on gaming. Microsoft's biggest purchase ever on video games, right? And now if this doesn't go through, it's like, screw it. We're selling the whole company, which makes up like 9% of their total revenue and has been called a pillar of the company moving forward.
Who would they sell Xbox to?
That's the other question. Who has enough money to, like, the only ones I can think of are three companies. Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Apple.
Apple could do it.
Or Tencent.
Oh.
Does
anyone want them to sell Xbox to Tencent?
I don't think anybody wants them to sell to Tencent. So realistically, it's Amazon and Apple, right? Because there's no way Sony could buy them. I don't even think they'd be allowed to buy them in that regard. Nintendo, probably not, right?
No.
Who? Because it's like who would it be? Like, would they have to dismantle their studios? I don't know.
Even Apple might look at that and say, well, we'd rather build our own gaming brand that looks more Apple.
Samsung,
call it, right?
Maybe we'll start the Samsung Xbox or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it'd be very difficult to find anyone that would want to buy a platform that they didn't necessarily create from the ground up, because there's still a lot of costs that you incur from just creating the box in general.
Yeah, unless you're just thinking like, oh, man, we're just fire selling Xbox Game Studios. Who wants Playground Games and Forza Horizon and the Fable IP, right? And you have EA and Take-Two and, some people bidding on it or something like that, right?
Yeah, but even then, I feel like it's also weird to buy a game studio that you don't have a lot of association with, because more than likely you're going to see a bunch of turnover afterwards anyway.
Which is something that happened recently. Shinji Mikami left Tango, GameWorks.
Yep.
We don't know if he's retiring. He's talked about it recently, but he's also talked about directing one last game too. So I don't know if he's leaving to go work in another studio to make that last game, or if he feels, all right, now's the time to hang it up. Maybe he
has enough money to just go and do it himself.
Well, I did see Imran Khan say that Imran Khan said that Mikami wanted to leave in 2019, but he felt that if he did leave, Bethesda would just shut Tango down, so he stayed. And now that they're owned by Xbox, and Hi-Fi Rush just came out, which he was executive producer on, that now he's sort of raised the next generation of developers, and that he can leave without being worried that Bethesda would shut down Tango.
Yeah, Microsoft needs to back the truck up for Tango, so they do.
Yeah, I was looking forward to Shinji Mikami directing another game, one last game, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. All right, so it's like it sounds like we got like 2 more weeks or 2 more months of all this ABK nonsense, because I think the FTC and the CMA, or not the FTC, the EU and the CMA give their decisions in April. And then there's the whole FTC stuff. Will it go to trial? Will they?
Microsoft trying to wrap this by June, right?
Well, it's like, wrap this stuff by May. Put Diablo 4 in Game Pass, baby. Day one.
They could do it as soon as it goes through. Okay, Diablo 4, massive. Get the key art ready.
Yeah, get the key art. We're announcing it Game Pass. I even saw today in the Reset Era thread some that IDIS collects different like things about the deal, but I guess like lawyers were interviewed, and one of the lawyers said that one of the packages that Microsoft's going to offer to the commissions, like the CMA, is that, the NVIDIA deal, but also that essentially they're going to sign a 10-year deal for all ABK games. So like Sony would get and Nintendo would get all the ABK games. So it's not just Call of Duty. It's interesting. But I don't know. That doesn't really address a lot of the CMA concerns, because the CMA concerns were strictly around Call of Duty. So who cares about if they bring back Guitar Hero? Because Guitar Hero is not going to move the needle in any way. Or
no, but it would probably add variety though to their service.
Sure. But I don't. But I guess like what I see is like, why would this? I can understand why Sony would like that, but like, oh, let's get the ABK games or whatever. And maybe even Microsoft is like, well, if we're already giving out Call of Duty to everybody, then what does it matter if we throw these other games on top of it? Plus, if Sony ever goes and makes a huge acquisition in the future, we can point to like, well, look at the agreement we had to make. We had to make 10 years, and all these games were multi-platform for 10 years. They have to do the same. I don't know. I sort of feel like I wouldn't personally care, because I sort of feel like in the next 10 years of Activision Blizzard anyways, it's just going to be Call of Duty for the most part anyways, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talk about these game dev cycles being 5 or 6 years a lot of times. So
it's like, I don't really, I mean, Blizzard's making it a survival game. I mean, do they bring back StarCraft? And that's the other thing. Like, I sort of feel like Microsoft wouldn't mind if Blizzard was going to make a PC only game. Like Phil's talked and mentioned about StarCraft a lot. I can easily imagine Phil being like I can imagine Kotick being like, no more StarCraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now that he's going to be gone, I can imagine Phil being like, make what you want, and be like, StarCraft 3, but PC only, and being okay with that. But then if you tell the regulators that everything ABK makes moving forward, at least for the next 10 years, is also everywhere, well, I mean, are you then forced to make StarCraft 3 on consoles as well?
Oh,
when
yeah,
you only want to put it on PC? So like, would you make that agreement? So I don't know, but that was just something I saw. I mean, do you think that would tip over the scales, being like, all right, you know what? Here, we'll give you every ABK game for the next 10 years. Is that good enough? What do you think?
I feel like that seems very, very general as well, though. Maybe you have some stipulations, like you said, where if it's going to be a PC only game, basically if it goes to Xbox, it would also go to PlayStation.
Yeah. Or if it was like an existing IP or something, or a game that was already on PlayStation, potentially. But I don't
know, Sony just doesn't seem interested in signing any of these deals. They're just like,
why would they?
Why
would they?
I still think the biggest concern Sony has currently, it's got to be the marketing for Call of Duty.
You think so? You think that's what
a
really
10-year deal where we have marketing for the next 10 years?
Do you think that's what Sony says? We want marketing, even though you own it. We want the marketing for the next 10 years. You think Sony would sign on the bottom line? Yeah,
dude, the marketing flipped everything for Sony during that PS4 generation. It was such a big deal to have that.
Yeah, it certainly did. It certainly was one of the. I mean, because Xbox had it during the 360 gen, they dominated US because of it, and then Sony took it from them, like a lot of things. And they basically ran with it, and they had an incredible generation. You're right. Like, maybe that's what they're worried about. Like, you can't market Call of Duty like that anymore to the regular people.
To think of what else there is. All right. So it's a 10-year deal, and to be honest, Sony probably doesn't have to sign it anyway, because the logistics, the money, everything that goes into Call of Duty, it wouldn't be financially responsible for Microsoft to even remove it at that point. And of course, the PR backlash, regulators looking at them a bit sideways if they want to do another acquisition. There's just too much that goes against them removing Call of Duty from PlayStation in the future, or at least for a long time. So that's the only thing I can think of that's really got Sony hung up, is like, man, that's going to hurt if we lose that marketing. That will, because one, they don't really make a lot of premium priced multiplayer games that would hold up their subscription, their PlayStation Plus subscription.
It's true.
So Call of Duty was one of the big ones. They aligned it well. They did, specific content that was only there for them, and it certainly spiked their overall users for their online fee.
Yeah, and even I think some documents came out that basically said Sony used a lot of the revenue they got from Call of Duty to fund their own first party games.
So I saw that,
So
and that seemed weird to me because they're basically saying, "Hey, the 30% we take from Call of Duty, which is a lot of money, yeah, we use that for things like developing first." And it's well, yeah, Microsoft probably uses the cut they get from Call of Duty to work on their own first party games
Yep.
too. It's just money. It's revenue. Revenue from gaming comes out and then goes back in.
Well, I
To more
think
games.
the argument would be if that revenue is lessened, right? If you're now selling it on if you're now selling it on Nintendo, and it's
Mm.
also free on Game Pass, and more
Mhm.
people are choosing to play it there, that means our revenue is decreased on PlayStation, which means now we don't have as much revenue to invest in first party. So that's bad for us. We won't be able to make the games we'll be able to make. Essentially, is what Sony's saying.
Yeah, I
'Cause
don't
we
get
don't
that
get the
argument.
revenue.
That sounds weird. I don't get it.
I mean, that would essentially be what they're saying.
Yeah, I guess it seems weird to be like they're gonna give it to Nintendo, but we need that. I thought they said that no one wants to play it there.
um, they say a lot of things. They do say a lot of things.
And that's the problem with these documents from everyone involved. It's just a bunch of conflicting statements all over the place based on even what they say from their front facing PR for gaming. It's all weird.
Yeah. So I'm gonna name off a bunch of games, and you're gonna tell me the year they're gonna release. Okay, for Xbox. All right. State of Decay 3.
2028.
Realistic. No, what do you really think?
For State of Decay 3?
Yeah, State of Decay
Oh
3.
man, I don't have a lot of faith in that. That might be 2025.
2025. Okay. Everwild.
2028. Everwild.
Gets
Now,
you rebooted
Everwild,
again?
I think that's another 2025 game.
Yeah. Okay. Compulsion's game.
Ooh. Compulsion, I'm gonna say 2024.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why not? Sure. All right. It's Software's next game.
They did Doom.
Doom Eternal came out in 2020.
These we're talking like they're like a
Release.
big game, or like could it be a Hi-Fi Rush level game?
Well, just whatever their next game is, whatever their next release.
Oh, it's pretty good. I don't think it's this. It actually released for it to release.
Yeah, it actually come out. Yeah.
Man, that I'm gonna say 2025 for it. For
A
it to release.
lot of 20. I think so far
know,
everything has been 2025 except for Compulsion. Gear 6.
Gear 6. See that's probably like 2026.
2026. You think it's further away?
Yeah, I think that's further away.
Do you see that? I think his name's Josh Ortega on Twitter, who wrote Gears 2's, seemingly to be back writing on Gear 6, supposedly. I don't know if you've.
I'd like to think that their overall, because they're going to use Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is known to speed up projects, and they're very, very talented, and they know the engine really well. That's the only thing that would make me at least consider dropping it into holiday 2025.
All right, Perfect Dark.
You know what? I think Perfect Dark's next year. I'm gonna say holiday 2024.
All right, so we got Compulsion's game, and we got Perfect Dark for next year.
Because they're working on Crystal Dynamics working on Tomb Raider, right?
Yes.
I think we see Tomb Raider this year.
Oh, you think it releases this year? Or
No, I think they show it. I think they show it to us this year.
Okay.
And then I do. I think that game, because they did that weird announcement for it where they didn't show anything, so everyone was like, okay, it's really far off. I kind of think they could have shown it when they announced it and they just didn't. So I feel like that's 20. Yeah, I think Perfect Dark's like end of 2024, like
Okay.
September, October.
Avowed.
I think Avowed's next year as well, 2024.
So we got Avowed for 2020.
First half.
We got
First
so
half
Avowed, Perfect Dark, and Compulsion's game for next year so far.
Yep, we got three lined up.
See, I'm trying to think of Bethesda. Who do we got left from there? Because you were saying 2025. Oh, Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones. Yeah. Indiana Jones. I feel like that's 2025.
You think that's 2025? Do you think Wolfenstein 3 is a thing?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes. I think it is, but I'm trying to think Indiana Jones has to be before that.
Yeah, I mean, because there was the thing. Pete Hines said Wolfenstein 3 was the thing. I think they got Indiana Jones and stopped working on Wolfenstein 3 to do Indiana Jones, and they'll go back.
That's a big one though to get Indiana Jones, and it might have been more interesting to the studio overall. Like, oh, this could be actually fun to put together. Not that it wouldn't be fun to put Wolfenstein, but it's a bit of a challenge. Something maybe change things up a bit. Then you go back to Wolfenstein.
All right, what about Forza Horizon 6?
Okay, so Forza Motorsport is
this year.
This year.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if they do it again next year. Would they do back to back?
I mean, Horizon used to be on a 2-year cycle. They went to 3 for 5. 3 years. It came out in 2021. 3 years would be next year.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it?
Would Forza Horizon 6 be next year? Or they go 4 years and put it on 2025? Because then it's like
they want to have DLC for this Forza we're going to get this year, right? And if that's not out till the end of this year, next year could just be DLC for this Forza, and then they push Horizon to next. Wow.
Well, we do have the Forza Horizon Rally Adventure expansion coming on March 29th for Forza Horizon 5, and that's the last expansion, at least that we know of. But then also Playground's working on Fable, and I didn't ask you when you thought Fable was coming out.
I think Fable's 20. I got that as like 2025. That could be like a first half 2025 though. That doesn't have to be.
I got that for like fall 2025.
Okay, fall, yeah. So I think we're still a little off for Fable, unfortunately.
Yeah. Outer Worlds 2? There's some Outer Worlds news today.
Oh gosh, Outer Worlds 2 is probably like 2025.
So Spawnwave saying 2025 is going to be an amazing year for Xbox.
It might be 2026. That is very far out to think about. It's like, man, 3 years. That feels like a long time, like far away. But then you get there and you're like, what happened to 3 years?
Yeah. What do you? All right. So Fallout, the next Fallout game. Jez seems to be very much convinced that Obsidian's going to make Fallout New Vegas 2 or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Do you think that happens before Fallout?
I hope so.
Because it seems like if you look at their schedule, you have Starfield releasing this year, cross fingers, right?
Yep.
You have Elder Scrolls 6. God, it's like, all right, well, 4 years from now it's 2027. It's like, all right, so even if you say Elder Scrolls is 2027, there's no delays. And then Fallout 5, you're looking at Fallout 5 in 2031.
I like how we're into the 2030s now.
Right? I mean, because if they don't let anybody else do it, somebody.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that's the thing? Is like you have Fallout, which is an incredibly huge franchise, getting its own TV show coming soon, right? Amazon's doing it, but there's no new game to pair it with. Like, I feel like Xbox and Bethesda has to build, like, they have to do something to get like a Fallout game sooner rather than later, right?
I always expect these games to follow a similar format, but getting a spin-off title in the universe isn't a bad idea either. If you want something to pair along with it, maybe something a little smaller. Because the thing with, again, these games is they take a long time to make. So if you want to be a bit more flexible and agile with the release, you come up with something a little different for the universe and build up to that next big release. I don't know, that way they can also have another studio work on it and make it rather than, they want their next big Fallout game or whatever to be close to the chest, and it's, they got specific studio and all this that works on it and people. But I like the idea of pairing games with these media releases because it seems to work every time.
Well, unless it's Halo, right?
We don't talk about that one.
Did you watch the TV show?
Unfortunately.
Are you going to be back for season 2?
Probably. I have to see what they do to the franchise.
Could it be worse? Could it be?
I have to know. I don't know. I don't know if it could be worse. I lived through Halo 5. I guess it could be.
Okay, sure, but I didn't actually watch the TV show. I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
It's not very good.
Yeah.
There was a much better way they could have done it. For some reason, they wanted to make Master Chief the main character, and they wanted to humanize him and do all this stuff. Master Chief, you should have just kept him as this like mythical figure and have the entire thing happen from a new character's perspective, who's maybe a cadet or someone newer, or just you see Master Chief throughout, but you never actually get too close to him. And I don't know. It got very, very weird and personal with Master Chief that I was like, oh man, that's not our Master Chief.
That's Master Cheeks.
Yeah, I had to do that, man.
Well, we have a Gears TV show coming and a Gears movie.
Oh
So
gosh.
hopefully that'd be
Oh
good.
no.
I mean, the movie maybe won't be, but the animated show, Netflix seems to do the shows at least
The animated show. Okay.
better.
Okay. If it's an animated show, all right, I feel more faith in that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's about 2 hours. I just wanted to see what you thought some of these games would hit for Xbox. So
I'm hoping we got some big years in front of us for Xbox.
yeah, hopefully we get the Starfield announcement this week.
Looking forward to it.
We see the Direct get that release date for June. Microsoft gives the middle finger to Square Enix.
They just shadow drop it. That's fine too.
And then and then John could be like, "How am I going to play Final Fantasy 16 and Starfield at the same time and make all
I mean,
my
it would be
videos?"
it would make for an interesting week at least of conversation.
Yeah, it definitely would. And then we can get a Hellblade 2 and the ABK deal can be over at some point, whether it's passed or whether it's blocked. And then we can just get back to some great gaming. Because so far right now, I don't know about you, but I think this year's been incredible so far. At least like gaming wise, like with the and I'm missing out on the Nintendo stuff. No Metroid Prime or Fire Emblem Engage, I believe is the game, right? Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem Engage, yeah.
But for me, it's been pretty good. It's been really good so far. But I want to thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed this 2-hour conversation with you.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
It was excellent. Let people know once again where they can follow you on social media, subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Find me on Spawn Wave. Most mornings I'm around. Got the gaming news, and weekends just have some fun with some other random stuff with maybe tech teardowns or some opinion based stuff. So thank you, Rand.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for being here. This should be up on live audio in I think maybe a day, and then it'll be up on YouTube a few days from now. So we got some more guests coming in the future, and we'll see you on Friday for a regular Xbox 2. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you later.